Welcome to the AsiaLink podcast. My name's Jim Gourlay, and I'm with my colleague Stephen Houston again. And we're delighted that you've taken the time to listen to what we're going to be talking about today. We've had a young people team. They've been in Mongolia recently and just come back, serving in various works there in youth camps and so on. We've also got another team in Central Asia right now, and they'll be helping out in a youth camp and traveling around Central Asia, meeting partners and being involved in youth work in other places. And then we'll have, in a week or two, there's going to be the last of our three youth or young people's teams, and they'll be going off to Southeast Asia, involved in Bible smuggling and all sorts of other good stuff. And in fact, they will be seeing the work that we're going to be talking about in this episode. We're continuing really in talking about Myanmar. We're going to be talking about the conflict in that country and the repercussions that there are for people there, and what one of our partners is doing to help in that. So, welcome along. Over to you, Stephen. Good to chat with you today.
Yeah, great to be back again, Jim. If you were listening last month, we hope you found it interesting. Of course, as Jim has mentioned, the focus was on Myanmar. Myanmar, as I'm sure we would have mentioned last month, it's home to the world's longest running civil war, civil war that many people have never heard of. It's been running for most of the past century. A lot of the work that our partner does is to help people who live in a part of Myanmar called Karen State. Karen State has been a particular target of the military. The army it's called the Tatmadaw in this part of the world, and Karen State has been putting up a pretty strong resistance.
I think it's worth saying there, Stephen, how the takeover of 2021 has really put jet fuel under this problem. This was a problem before 2021, even under Aung San Suu Kyi, but it had largely died down. There was relative peace. I say only, there were 300,000 internally displaced people in Burma, Myanmar in 2021. But you know, that number now is 3.8 million, and it's estimated to be 4 million by the end of this year. So you can see how that's radically deteriorated over these 5 years as the military have taken over.
It's a conflict that's not going away. The stories that we get from our partners indicate that things are still really difficult for people who are living in Karen State. The two main people groups are the Karen people and the Karenni people, kind of similar names, and they're similar in many ways, but they do both have their own distinct cultures. You can even see that in their cultural dress, which is different, and they speak similar language, but each has its own dialect. When I was putting together my notes for this, I wrote the question, "What is a dialect?" And I'm
Yeah.
not sure I have a great answer to it, but it's a distinctive form or expression of a language.
It's a bit more than accent, isn't it? I mean, you've got a Northern
Yeah.
Irish accent, I've got my own accent, but when you start using different words and people
Mhm.
say, "Well, what's that?" Then you're into dialect, I think. That's the way I see that. It's basically the
Yeah.
same language. It's like Scots. A lot of this English is the same, but then there's all the different phrases, words. Then you start getting into something a bit more dialectical. I think that's possibly, but I'm sure there are some expert linguists out there who can put me right on that.
Feel free to email in,
Yeah.
expert linguist, for the answer. So, yeah, different people groups, they are the big targets in current state of the Tatmadaw. There's also a religious dimension to it as well. We talked about last month that the Burmese identity, national identity, is so wrapped up and intertwined with Buddhism. There's this famous phrase, "To be Burmese is to be Buddhist." The Tatmadaw, they belong to the Buddhist faith, whereas in Karen State, the Karen and the Karenni people, there's actually quite a large number who would be Christian, may just belong to a family designated as Christian, or they may have a faith of their own. But there's a religious dimension in that as well as to why the Karen and the Karenni are such particular targets. I mean, not all Karen and not all Karenni are Christian. There's still a lot of spirit worship and Buddhists among them, but there is that religious dimension there as well, that not only are they being targeted because of their ethnicity, but also because of this kind of faith difference. So what does this conflict look like in Korea? What does it what does it mean if you are being targeted by the Tatmadaw? What's happening? Well, we get stories all the time, horrific stories of villages getting attacked. It may be that the army, the Burmese army, the Tatmadaw has moved into a region. They begin to bomb it. They begin to burn down homes. There's fighting with rifles and guns on both sides. People are shot, soldiers are killed, and people must flee. Men and boys who are captured, particularly boys, quite often are press ganged into military service that even fight against their own people. It can be very easy just to let that wash over us. But if we just even take a moment and imagine what it must be like to live in fear of a military group coming to the place you live, to your community, you're going to fight your neighbors that are gonna put you out of your home. If that does happen to you, you're gonna have to run. You're gonna have to pack up whatever you can, take whatever you can, and flee for safety. It's one thing for us to imagine doing that, but in this part of the world where homes are made out of wood and whatever other materials people can get their hands on, people have basically nothing. They're living in something close to poverty. They're living hand to mouth. Whatever they grow, they eat.
Mm.
For a military group to come in and sweep away whatever little that they have, and then for these people to have to go and flee and camp out in a jungle quite often, it it really is unimaginable for people like us living in the wealthy West with all of the protections and safety nets available to us. Imagine losing everything and camping out in the middle of a jungle because the military has moved into town.
As another thing I found out was that this doesn't just happen once, you get displaced once. You go to a safe place, but then that place gets targeted, and then it happens again, and some of these people have been displaced multiple times. So, although we talk about, say, nearly 4,000,000 people displaced, on average, they're displaced 8 times, each of them, 8 times. That's the average. So, it can happen so many times. So, yeah, just hard to imagine, isn't it?
These are people who probably in the first instance, before they were even displaced, maybe had difficulty accessing things like clean water or medical care. But then once they're displaced and they are essentially on the run within their own country, their access to those things becomes incredibly difficult. And so there's a huge need to help people who are displaced. Our partner has told stories before of women who have had to flee. They're camping out in the middle of a jungle, and I I'm not saying that word flippantly. It literally is jungle. It's like it's wild, untamed trees and vegetation full of uh, creatures and disease. Our partner telling us stories of women having to give birth in those circumstances because there's nowhere else for them to go. So there's a huge need to bring some form of aid to these people. And that's one of the things our partner that we're going to be thinking about today. That's one of the things that she does. I can't tell you her real name for reasons of security today, uh, but we're going to call her Aria. She, along with several others in her team, she quite often will travel into some of these conflict zones to try and help people who have been displaced and they're out in the middle of nowhere with next to nothing. She's able to get to them and bring them crucial aid. Maybe that's, a tarpaulin to provide some shelter, some food and clean water to help them get through a few days. Cannot understate how dangerous some of the places are that she and her team are going to. Araya told me a story of how she had heard of one particular group of people who had had to flee their home and they were camping out in the middle of nowhere and she had heard that they were in urgent need of a bit of help, and she went to them. She knew where they were, and she was able to travel to them, and whenever she arrived at this little settlement where these people had gathered, they were amazed that she had made it to them, because the route that she had taken to them had taken her over the top of a minefield. She had literally unknowingly walked through an active minefield on her way to this group. That just gives you a sense of the danger that this woman and her team are putting themselves through.
Thank God she was preserved through that, but that's God's kindness and provision for her. But oh, we've got to pray for her, haven't we, that she's safe because she does go into the danger zone.
There's an evangelistic edge to this as well, because whenever she's traveling into these places, um, quite often she'll have Bibles with her. She's taking every opportunity she has to witness to people that she's meeting, both to those who are hiding out, camped out somewhere remotely. She's bringing something of the hope of Christ to them. But I've seen pictures of her witnessing and giving Bibles to soldiers, those on the Korean side who are actively fighting. It's an amazing ministry of getting out there into the belly of the beast, so to speak, and representing the Lord. Aria, she also has a ministry in Thailand along the border with Myanmar. It's a children's home. It's called Shekinah, which, if you know your Hebrew, means God's dwelling place. Aria has set up this home to minister to children who, for one reason or another, have been separated from parents or other caregivers, and it's a place where they're given a home, where they find a family, where they are receiving education and something of a hope for the future. It's a really special place. I think anybody I've spoken to who's visited China over the years would say it is a special place. We've had teams visit China a few times a year over the last number of years. Anyone I've spoken to from those people are so taken with how special it is. It's nothing remarkable to look at, really. You know, it's a few buildings, a few dormitories for the children. There's a meeting house where they gather to worship. It's not much to look at, the actual buildings. The physical geography of the place is stunning. When I say it is on the border with Myanmar, it is right on the border with Myanmar. It's a 2-minute walk down to the river, which marks the border with Myanmar, and when you look over Shekinah, towering over it is these hills, and the hills are Myanmar, and it's so close to Myanmar that whenever I first visited, I was told that, well, if you hear gunfire, if you hear the sound of explosions, don't worry. That's okay. Quite often, the sounds of those things will drift across and still be heard in Shekinah. I was actually told that I should only worry if I see the children running. If the children run, then I should run too. That was the warning I was given whenever I arrived. But it is remarkable, just the location of it, just right across from this land that's getting torn apart by conflict.
Whenever you arrive there, I think the thing people will remember is the welcome they get from the children. You're swamped by children who are genuinely excited to see you. You know, kids will give you a hug. They're just absolutely delighted to see you, and it's a very moving experience for all to go there. And another thing that's moving about it is when you share in worship with them on a Sunday, and they're praising the Lord, they're leading the service, they're fully involved in all of that ministry, and you take part in it. And I've seen many an adult with a tear in their eye as they're
Yeah.
sharing worship with them.
There's around 60 at the home, ranging in age from, up at the older end, in their late teens. Soon they'll be moving on and getting jobs and things like that, all the way down to just little ones. These are children who, they've lost their parents. Either they've been killed, or they don't know where they are, or their parents are in such circumstances that they literally can't look after them. That's a lot for a child to carry. Many of them have seen the horrors of war back home. Some of them have been on unimaginable journeys, to even just get to Shekinah. There's one girl who I actually met when I was there. She is the eldest of 5. They managed to make their way to the river that separates Karen State with Thailand. She was the only one that was able to swim of the 5, and what she did was she swam across the river with one of her siblings, left them safe on the other side before she swam back over again to get the next of her siblings, swam them over, went back and forth until all 5 were safe on the Thai side of the river. And like this is a big river. It's it's fast flowing,
Yeah.
incredibly dangerous
I've seen the
undertaking.
current, yeah. I mean, when we saw people crossing over on a boat, you can tell looking at it, the current, because of the angle that it goes across the river, and I imagined myself swimming thinking, "That would be some job. That'd be some job."
Every evening at Shekinah, in the meeting house, they have a time of praise and of worship. Whenever teams in the past have arrived at Shekinah, they've often kind of arrived in the middle of one of these meetings. I remember when I arrived, I was just blown away by, first of all, the volume of the singing. 60 kids. I've been in a church meeting with a similar amount of people, and it's a fraction of the volume, but also just the enthusiasm and the passion and the love in the hearts of these kids. You know, not all of these children came from a Christian background. Some of them did come from Christian homes. Doesn't necessarily mean they came from believing homes, and they maybe came from nominal backgrounds. But for these 60 children, nearly every single one of them have made a personal commitment to the Lord. They've come to faith. They found not only a home, they found a spiritual family, they find their heavenly Father through what's been shared with them at Shekinah. And so you have these wonderful times of fellowship every night, um, with the children. They're singing their hearts out. There's a real maturity among them as well. They have a Sunday service every Sunday. That's often led by some of the older children, those who are in their teens. They'll be sharing, they'll be speaking. Whenever our teams who have visited, whenever they go to leave, the children pray for the grown-ups. They're laying hands, they're hugging, they're praying for the grown-ups. And it's a degree of maturity I'm not sure I've come across very often among that particular age range back home. It really is remarkable, the faith that the Lord has planted in the hearts of these children who have gone through so much.
The way that spoke to me when I saw that and experienced that being prayed for, I mean, sometimes by quite young children, and I think it really spoke to what we have as sets of expectations about children, what they're capable of, what we can expect them to do and to be involved in spiritually. I think that challenges perhaps some of those expectations we might
Mm.
have in churches in the UK about what children can be doing and where they can get to and
Yeah.
grow to in maturity.
One of the things I always remember from those times, uh, in Chicana in the meeting house, on the back wall, there's this lovely mural. It's some verse art on the wall, and it's that famous verse from Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you," says the Lord, "plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And of course, that's a verse that is quite often taken out of context. I think it would be fair to say. Of course, the context was God was speaking through Jeremiah to the Israelites in exile. They were far from home. They were living under Babylonian rule, uncertain of what was going to come next, uncertain of what the future would bring, uncertain if their current circumstances would ever change. And I remember looking at that verse on the wall, standing in that room with these 60 children, 60 refugee children, and understanding the power of that promise in such a fresh way. Children who had seen unimaginable things, who, as Aria told me at one point, still break down in tears over the memories of what has happened to them, over the grief that they have. And here they are in a different land, in a new home, but God is delivering on that promise for them in that place. They are prospering, they are protected from harm, they have hope, and they have a future, and nearly all of them have found salvation in Jesus Christ, and it's just a wonderful thing to see someone like Aria serving the Lord faithfully and courageously, and seeing the Lord answer, the prayers of those who are asking for mercy, asking for help, and delivering on promises such as the one in Jeremiah 29:11 to give his people a hope in the future. And here we have 60 refugee children who are receiving exactly that.
Yeah, it's so good, and whoever's listening to this, we can take that in the new covenant, can't we? We can claim that and say that the Lord has plans for you. He has plans for his people to prosper his people in Jesus Christ, and that is a great promise wherever you are, wherever you find yourself right now. That is the God who loves us, the one who sent his son for us, and that gives us a hope and a future. So whether we're fleeing from civil war conflict or whether we're living a life in the UK or wherever we are, whatever we're going through, that is true for us in Christ. The Lord is good. He has plans to prosper us.
Amen.
We want to tell you about our new book that's come out. It's called Sparks of Glory. It's been written by one of our team, and she's interviewed 8 of our partners and shared their stories, life story, coming to faith, ministry, some fascinating stories in there in several different countries. And there is a spiritual reflection at the end of each of those biographies. There's a challenge there, something of a challenge there. You can get that at asialink.org/books. £10 a copy, £2.99 post and packaging. But if you buy 4 copies, that's a free post and packaging. And all the proceeds, of course, go to the supporting the work of ministries like the one we've been talking about today and the work of AsiaLink generally. So do check out Sparks of Glory on our website.
Thanks for joining us. As we've shared about Myanmar, we'll be moving on somewhere completely different next month. So join us then. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye for now.